Hello there RPG lovers and welcome to another video. Crowned in Steel is an upcoming action adventure heavily inspired by Severance's Blade of Darkness. In 2023 I was attending Gamescom in Belgrade and actually had a chance to try out the pre-alpha version of this game. It was very early in development, but even then I felt a very strong Blade of Darkness influence. I actually made a couple of videos about Blade of Darkness and I really enjoyed playing that game, so I was really interested in learning more about Crowned in Steel. Fast forward to March 2025, a free demo appeared on the Steam page. I completed the demo last night and I'm going to talk about the game a little bit. Crowned in Steel demo throws you straight into action. There is still no story or cutscenes, but I'm pretty sure we can expect to see that when the full game releases. Besides the obvious Blade of Darkness influence, Crowned in Steel is also inspired by Conan the Barbarian, at least a little bit. I mean, you have this huge muscular dude who's half naked, with a similar hairstyle to Conan, chopping enemies in pieces. The only thing that's missing is some hot girls to save.
Take me and crush me with your love.
Crowned in Steel left some very good first impressions on me. However, I don't think that's going to be the case with the majority of new players. That's because the action combat has a specific learning curve and it's not your typical third-person action game. Maybe it looks like that, but trust me, it's definitely not. What I mean by this is the combo system that the game has, which requires you to use two buttons. For example, you can use the standard attack with R1, which will do this overhead slam. But in order to perform combos, you need to use the directional inputs. You have to use left and right directions on your thumbstick and combine it with the attack button to create combos. The controls are very snappy and responsive in this game. It's a massive upgrade from what I experienced back in 2023 with that pre-alpha version of the game. So it makes performing these combos smooth and precise, but the combat needs to click with you after a while. This will come as a second nature to everyone that played Blade of Darkness, but people who didn't might have a bit harder time getting used to this combat system at first. I think it's absolutely worth it, because it feels so satisfying when you get a grasp of this interesting concept. There are some nice tutorial hints whenever you reach a certain point in the demo, which will definitely help a lot. You'll pick up a decent variety of weapons in the demo, as well as shields. Another key aspect of this combat system is the step dodge mechanic. You can dodge in all directions and also combine your attacks with the dodge mechanic. As a matter of fact, doing this in combat is a preferred way to play this game. The step dodge doesn't use any stamina, but your attacks do. The amount of stamina your attacks use depends on the weapon itself. You start off by finding some simple weapons like a shovel, but then you find some proper weapons like one-handed swords, axes and big two-handed weapons like this. When you pull out your weapon, you move considerably slower, so putting it away makes more sense out of combat. The demo features a small weapon wheel where you can change weapons or use potions. Speaking of which, the potion drinking and smashing the bottle animations should be very familiar to Blade of Darkness fans. If you pick up something to eat or drink when your health is low, your character automatically consumes it, just like in Blade of Darkness. And if your health is full, the item gets stored in the inventory. I mean, these are all small details that might seem insignificant, but it's like a little love letter to all Severance fans. I have to say that I'm actually surprised how smooth the combat animations are and how well they blend together with the dodge mechanic. Your character will seamlessly transition from the step dodge to the side sweeps, assuming you press it at the right time. The timing needs to be on point and you have to press the attack button and the direction of the attack at the end of the previous action. What I found very interesting about the combo system that I haven't seen before is how you can continue your combo even if you get blocks. Your character will be staggered for a second if you get blocked, but you can recover and continue the combo as long as you press the next attack at the right time. The combat feels the smoothest when you combine the opposite directional attacks from left to right or the other way around. Enemies will use the same tactic, they can also dodge, move around, block and wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. It's really like an upgraded version of Blade of Darkness with a bit smoother animations and less clunkiness. It can still feel a bit clunky, especially in the beginning, like I said before, but that's definitely by design. Enemies also have a little stamina system of their own. They will get tired and stunned after a while, which you can use to your advantage. We didn't even mention one of the biggest appeals for this game. That would be the brutal limb cutting feature. You can chop enemies in half, chop off their heads and limbs. Even though it's very cool, I would say it's still not as good as the original Blade of Darkness Dismemberment system, but it's certainly getting there. You could go completely crazy in that old game and enemies would purposely die slowly so you can cut them in more than a few pieces. And you could even start cutting them while they're on the ground, like a little psychopath you are. I saw some footage of this game where you can do the same on dead enemies, just like you could in the old Blade of Darkness, but the demo doesn't seem to have that feature. So it's safe to say that the limb cutting feature will have some updates in the future, and the full game will probably be even better when it comes to this. The limb cutting feature makes the combat so much more satisfying, especially because the cuts seem to follow the weapon angle. So even killing the basic enemies over and over again never gets old. Speaking of which, there is a decent amount of enemy types for such a short demo and one little boss fight at the end. It's more like an elite enemy than a boss, but still. I think that's my biggest concern for the game, because I'm wondering how they're going to design the bosses. The boss fights were the biggest problem with the original Blade of Darkness, and one of the reasons why that game didn't age all that well. I mean, it was totally fine for 2001, but for modern standards it was a bit underwhelming. But that doesn't mean that Crowned in Steel won't be able to figure it out. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. My biggest problem with the demo is how weak the sound effects are in combat. If they manage to drastically improve the sound effects, it will make the combat system so much better. It would give it a proper sense of impact and that oomph, which the game currently lacks. The combat itself feels very addictive when you get used to it. This demo doesn't have any special abilities, skill trees or anything similar to that. It only has a linear leveling up system, which increases the power of your character in general. I'm wondering if we're going to have similar unique weapon abilities to Blade of Darkness. That game had at least one unique combat move for each weapon and much more combos in general, so I hope to see something similar in this game as well. The only difference between the weapon types in the demo is how strong it is and how much stamina it uses. But I'm pretty sure we're going to get at least a bit more than that when the full game releases. I loved experimenting with different weapons and trying out their unique moves and combos in the old game. As for the level design, I knew I'm going to enjoy it from the very beginning. This demo feels like the first level of the game. It's not that short, but it's also not very long. You can finish the whole thing in about an hour. But if you're the type of a player who likes to explore everything, it might take you a bit longer than that. Crowned in Steel demo has a vertical level design with some optional paths to take and secrets to find. It felt really satisfying to find some little shortcuts and finding little secrets like the key for this armory where you can get a new shiny weapon. The best highlight when it comes to this is when I found a little shortcut which takes me behind this huge group of enemies so I could do a surprise attack. That felt really freaking good, and I can only hope we see something similar in the full game. The level in the demo is like a fortress, which kinda reminds me of this level from Blade of Darkness. It also has multiple smaller areas which are connected with bridges and vertical exploration within all of those towers. You can't jump in this game, but you can grab ledges only on some places. The game never holds your hand, so you have to figure out by yourself where you can climb on ledges. Since you can't jump, you need to use the same button that you use for the step dodge. And if something is climbable, your character will do the animation. Now, to me, it feels pretty natural and obvious where you can climb, but it would be even better if they expand this feature a little bit, so you can grab pretty much all ledges that you can physically reach. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case in the full game, but even if it remains like this, the level design has the potential to be great. I talked about the bad sound effects in combat, but I think other sound effects, as well as the soundtrack in the background, are pretty good. Your guy has these grunting sound effects, which are very similar to Blade of Darkness. Overall, Crowned in Steel is really like a spirit of successor to Blade of Darkness, and I think they're on a very good path to make a great action adventure. If the full game has enough interesting levels to explore like this, more enemies and bosses to kill, with a more extensive weapon and armor system, I'm really going to enjoy this game. This demo is completely free, so feel free to check it out and give your own feedback to the developers. If you played Blade of Darkness, you really shouldn't miss this game. I'm really looking forward to see more updates and future versions of the game, and I fully plan to cover it again. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.